Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bocce Boys podcast. We are thrilled to have you. We have an exciting show for you today. We got some more college basketball talk. We got a little bit of NBA, and to sprinkle it off something new, we have some hockey talk. The boys took a trip this weekend, and we can't wait to tell you more about it. But you're going to have to stay tuned because the show starts right now.
Summer, all I did was rest. New Year's, all I did was stretch. Valentine's Day, I had sex. We'll see what's about to happen next. This ain't no regular shit. We never begging for shit. Niggas is ready to quit. Shit that they hate to admit. In Texas, I keep a rifle inside of the whip, call it driving a stick. In Vegas, I get $2 million a night from the wind just to run through the hits. All that on top of the chips.
All right, welcome back to the Bocce Boys. We got another special guest, one that should be familiar to you all. Amir, welcome back. I think you are muted. Just going to throw it up there.
Just keeping quiet for you, Ethan.
I appreciate it. All right, guys, we got a lot to talk about, but let's kick it off with something a little different. We sprinkled a little bit of college basketball in here, there and there, but let's really get into it. Let's talk about the top 25. We'll get into two specific conferences, but we haven't really delved much into the college basketball world, and it's starting to heat up, guys. It's the middle of February, in case you didn't know. Actually, it's technically the end of February, so March is right around the corner. We got to get ourselves prepared. Looking at this top 25, Davis, what stands out to you the most looking at these rankings? Hey, I can't hear you.
Hey, everybody. It's UConn, without a doubt. I mean, you look at the last few weeks and you could say, hey, UConn's right there, Purdue, Houston, all these other teams, even Marquette had a chance to be up there if they were to possibly have beaten UConn this past Saturday, but they got shelled.
Yes.
But I mean, you can see right here, UConn is the unanimous number one team in the coaches poll in the AP top 25. So there's really no debate right now who is the best team in college basketball, and they're going to have a tester tonight, and we're recording this before they play at Creighton tonight. But I think that's going to be the biggest game for the rest of their season, the regular season, until the Big East tournament.
Yeah, I mean, UConn has been the tank this year and last year. As a Big East fan, I hate to admit that they are the defending champions, but they've earned the right. You said it. I mean, they're unanimous number ones for a reason. This is the best they really have been in over 10 or 15 years. I know they won a title, but this is the best UConn basketball has looked in a long time, and it's frankly very frightening. You mentioned Marquette, but one thing that really sticks out to me is the power of the SEC on this top 25. You look at Tennessee, a team that, I mean, they kind of came out of nowhere. They got that Dalton kid who's been going nuts this year, so that's been something. But then you see a lot of other teams like Alabama, Auburn, Kentucky's on there. South Carolina has been making a lot of noise. Florida has been decent as well. They're the 24th team on that list. But what is it about the SEC that is so strong this year? I mean, you do see a couple of these teams, but not this many.
Yeah, it's all about the offense for all these teams. Classic SEC basketball, the offense is just dominating. And, you look at teams like Tennessee and Kentucky and Alabama, where they can go up against almost any defense and they still should be able to shred, and they should be able to get in the paint, and they will knock down their three-pointers. I mean, it's really not a surprise. This is year in and year out. Just like how we look at football, college football, the SEC's,
Sure.
I would say one of the better defensive leagues. Big Ten is up there in the defensive side. And then you look at the Big 12 and the Pac-12, and it's all offense. In college basketball, the SEC always dominates offense. The Big 12 always dominates defense. The Big 10 dominates defense as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, going through the list of some of these teams here, you look at a team like Kentucky, they might be the best and most electric offense in the entire nation. But they're not going to be able to stop teams on the defensive side. So that's where I worry about them when it comes to madness time. But I think a team like Tennessee can hold their own defensively.
Their coaches, Barnes.
They have enough guys that they're deep as well. I think Alabama's another team that kind of actually is coming out of the woodworks a little bit. They've been really solid in recent years, really since I feel like Sexton's been there. That was probably 4 or 5 years ago. But wow. I think that this is going to be a conference that can make some noise, as there are some that will not make noise. I think the Big Ten is going to be one of them.
Yeah, speaking of the Big Ten, Amir, I got a question for you. We see a certain team in the number 3 spot, the Purdue Boilermakers. They're a team that is usually towards the top of this top 25 ranking, especially the last couple of years, but a team that never goes far in March. Are you believing in them?
I'm not. And speaking towards that defensive stuff that Davis was just talking about, and I guess I'll touch on the SEC for a second. Just looking at the stats, Auburn and Tennessee, Davis, actually one of the better teams in Division One for defense in terms of rating.
Interesting.
They are exactly the same rating right now, and there are a couple of teams that are above them that you might say like, yeah, whatever it is. They don't actually play anyone, so that's why they're good. But in terms of the defense for the Boilermakers, not so good at all. And honestly, their offense isn't great as well. Like I just
Interesting.
don't have any faith in Edie. I don't really have any faith in the Boilermakers. I don't like them. Sorry, Joe Break, but I'm not a big fan of Purdue. There's a couple of teams on here that I love though, and I'm sure we can probably talk about those guys.
Yeah, tell me who you love.
I love St. Mary's. St.
Really?
Mary's is a team that I think could be very streaky, very could heat up for the tournament and really put on a show. They are trending right where they need, or right at the time they kind of need to trend. And there are a couple other teams on here that I also like. Tennessee, another team that I believed in last year. I think this is their year to really make another big run. But I mean,
There we go.
Yeah, there it is.
There's
a couple
love
others.
the Gales. Love the
But
Gales.
It's mostly St. Mary's and Tennessee, two teams that I love this year.
All right, good to know. Just want to mention also we got a couple big matchups tonight. We have UConn, the number one team, which we already talked about, facing off against Creighton, a middle of the road Big East team. I want to give them the respect that they are obviously due. Tennessee, by the way, is currently losing by 3 to Missouri at halftime. It's just halftime, but just want to throw that out there. And then let's go to the Big 12, Davis, because another big matchup tonight: TCU and Texas Tech. TCU is not ranked, but they have the same exact record as Texas Tech. And as a team that is not ranked, that's a huge, huge game in the Big 12 as we are coming down the stretch. But looking at the standings, like what does a game like tonight for TCU and Texas Tech mean for the rest of the Big 12?
Yeah, I think it's massive. You look at some of these middle of the road teams, they all can contend for a Final Four appearance. And it's crazy to think about that, how dominant this conference is right now. But with all the realignment and them getting
Arizona,
I can name them all: Houston, BYU, Cincinnati, and UCF from last year, all now new Big 12
Sorry, I was
members.
looking towards next year.
I think that, in all honesty, every single team in this conference has a chance in March Madness, except maybe the bottom 4. You look at some of these teams, you see Houston, Iowa State, and Baylor.
Let me ask you, why do you include Texas and Oklahoma before you get to the rest?
I think that you include Texas because of some guys they have on their roster. They have Max Abrams, a guy who just scored his 3,000th point the other night.
Wow.
This is again, middle of the road of a conference like BYU, Texas Tech, TCU, and they're all contending. If you look all the way on the right side, this is a great indicator of this. Every single team has a top 25 win this year. I mean, you don't see that in very many conferences. You look at the Big Ten. I mean, you look at the bottom of the Big Ten at some teams. I know Ohio State did just beat Purdue at home this past weekend, but there are going to be bottom feeder teams that will never win in every conference. That's not the case this year. As my pick of the day would have been West Virginia. They are currently beating UCF. It's right around halftime at the moment, but I mean, this is a conference where I think my hot take would end up, and I don't even know if it's very hot. I think two of these teams will be in the Final Four.
Oh, 2.
1,000%. And we're overlooking Kansas. We're overlooking Hunter Dickinson. Kansas is having a down. They're having a down year, and they're 20-6.
Are we overlooking Kansas though? I know that they won a national championship 2 years ago, and they do have Bill Self. Sorry. With that respect I already gave them due aside, Hunter Dickinson has never really gotten far in an NCAA tournament. I mean, Michigan has been, very disappointing. I know they got to a championship in 2018, but they got their asses kicked. But I'm not a huge believer in Kansas. I was for this first half of the year, but Houston whooped them 2 weeks ago, and then they followed it up by losing to Texas Tech, and I think they've had some other lucky losses. I want to say they lost to like TCU or something like that. I don't know. The regular season doesn't matter too much. I think in conference matters more, but I'm not buying Kansas this year. I love Houston. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, I think I'm buying a little bit of Kansas just because they're down at the moment. And again, look at all these teams, and the regular season is so different. I think the Big 12 conference tournament is going to be very interesting.
Oh yeah.
The story of college basketball this year is all about home teams, home teams, home teams, home teams. Every single home team is winning this year. You look at the home records of these teams, you're seeing three perfect records. You're seeing even teams like Oklahoma State is 10-5, and they're all the way at the bottom. They only have 11 wins this year, but guess what?
Yeah.
Home games matter. So I think that's when these teams are going to start to go to a neutral court. I think it's going to turn into a very, very interesting debacle of who's making the madness and who's going to be in the top 68.
Yeah, I love it. And before we move on, because I want to get some thoughts on the rest of the NCAA, but what do you think about BYU? You've been all over them, but they've been slipping a little bit. They had a tough loss last week. Where are you at right now?
Personally, I'm still on the bandwagon. They play Baylor tonight at home. I'm all about it. I would love to see if Amir sees any stats on them currently. But as I said last week, they've shot more 3-pointers than 2-pointers this year. And that's a recipe for disaster for teams that, it's a recipe for disaster.
Bad.
It could be, but there's upside. Obviously, everybody on the floor can shoot. All 5 guys can shoot on the floor at any given time for BYU.
But is that the way to win in college basketball? That's the way to win the NBA.
I will say that they do have one of the highest offensive ratings in Division I, and they're right below teams like Kentucky, Gonzaga, Arizona, and Connecticut and Alabama. I mean, a bunch of teams that you would say that are super hot, and you don't really think of BYU in that.
And this is in a conference that is known for their defense. Like you're not seeing a Houston at the top of the offensive ratings. You're not seeing an Iowa State, a Baylor, maybe Kansas. But the only thing that's really worrying me would be the defense on the BYU side. But I think tonight, a home game, it's going to be in Mormontown. I don't know where BYU plays, but I think this is going to be the test of the season for them, in all honesty. So we'll see. When this pod comes out, we'll already know who won and lost.
Oh, they're playing tonight at the Marriott Center in Provo, Utah. I just want to throw that out there.
Never heard of her. It's Mormontown.
Never heard of her. Yeah, it's Mormontown now. All right, Davis, let's move on to another conference that I know quite well, but let's get the listeners educated on, is the Big East, the prestigious conference in all of college basketball. My Villanova Wildcats are right in the middle. It's just lovely to see. But I want to get to your guys' thoughts first. Amir, we've already talked about UConn and Marquette, but what do you make of the rest of the Big East?
Honestly, I think the Big East is pretty overrated, except for UConn. I love Marquette. Like, I'll never not love Marquette. I don't know what it is. I just love their logo or something. I don't know. They're always they have something in my heart.
What are Golden Eagles anyway? It's stupid.
I don't know. Well, whatever they are. Honestly, I think the Big East the Big East is a little weak, but I don't know anything about basketball. I think their logos are pretty boring. There's not a lot of varied colors, a lot of blue. And
it's a heavy blue conference.
I think it hurts them overall. I'd honestly prefer some purple in there, maybe green here and there, but we don't got any of that.
Must be an East Coast thing. I don't know. But speaking of the East Coast, I mean, the St. John's, they started off so hot, and Rick Pitino and his 15 seconds of fame have already shot out. I mean, they are done. I saw him rip his team the other day too, which is always great to see. Always great to see. But a lot of these teams are, I think, good, as you would say. But Amir, I think you're right. I think the Big East is a little bit overrated, and these teams are eating each other alive. And when that happens, I mean, rarely do you see a team ever come out of that in the tournament. Maybe we'll see the defending champs, Huskies, defend, but I don't think Marquette can go far. Creighton, this is definitely the weakest Creighton team in a couple of years. Providence is not the same team they were last year. They've definitely taken a hit with Ed Cooley leaving and heading to Georgetown, even though they still freaking suck and haven't won a conference game. I know they won one this year, but they just freaking suck. They suck. And DePaul sucks even more. But, Davis, let me rephrase that. Can we see a Big East team not named the UConn Huskies in the Final Four?
Yes, and I'm going to play a little devil's advocate. I am going to go Marquette. I think Marquette has the depth and the starting 5 that could put them over the edge. I think Tyler Kolek is one of the best players in college basketball right now.
He's so overrated.
He's not. He's absolutely not overrated. He's shooting 50% from three over the last 6 weeks. It's some absurd numbers. They have the bigs that can hang around on the defensive side. I know they just got their asses handed to them against UConn, but again, what did I say the whole season is about? Home teams, home teams, home teams, and it was at UConn. And I think this is going to be a great representation looking back and saying, oh, you know what? Maybe UConn was the better team that day, but they were playing on their home floor. It's tough. It's tough for these college kids to move around like every other day. I mean, in the NBA, we're used to back-to-back games and whatever, but these college kids, it's absolutely not on the radar for them to play on a Thursday night and then a Saturday afternoon. So I think that I would say Marquette, and I'd put a sleeper out there. I think this might make you pretty happy, Ethan. I think if Villanova makes the tournament, I think they could win a game. That's all I'm going to say. I think Justin Moore could. I think this is all Neptune's fault. This is all Neptune's fault. If Neptune was not the coach, I think they could. I think I may have teamed Ethan today during work saying I'd rather have Caillou as my coach. Just as a statement, I think anybody is better than him, but he has made the defense better. The defense has been decent. The offensive side is atrocious, though.
Yeah, I mean, it drives me crazy watching Villanova. I have the game on right now. They're up 9 on Butler, which is good. But to me, it's just like I think that they are a very deep team. I think they did a lot of very, very good work in the transfer portal last year. They got a couple of very good guys. Tyler Burton from Richmond was awesome last year. Led his conference in scoring. I think it was something like 18 points per game, but that's down to like 12 this year. TJ Bamba, a transfer from Washington State, who's very, very good. I think he was all conference last year. He's averaging like 8 points per game this year. He's had a couple games with like 1 to 3 points. So I don't understand it, but to what you said about the defense, like it's not working. It's really not working. To me, they all look like grown men out there. All these transfers are grown men. They look like adults, especially Bamba. Like I don't understand why there's not more physical defense. And you're right. It's Neptune's fault. I just think it's also hard to follow a coach like Jay Wright. Let's say
1,000%.
that it's really hard to do that. I think his name's Hubert Brown, the UNC coach. He's done a very good job. So is Shire at Duke, but like it's hard to follow these guys, man. Like maybe they didn't do the best job picking them, but it's discouraging to say the least. But Nova's this kind of team. They'll rebound. They have the resources. They're 8-4 at home this year, which is really bad for a home team. But like they have the culture that I just don't think that will be lost. But it's a tough 2 years. Don't get me wrong. It's been a tough 2 years.
Ethan, I'm going to bring up one more thing about Villanova specifically that I think every college basketball team should be intrigued in doing, because I think there are some teams like St. John's who don't do this all the time. Stop playing in the Wells Fargo Center. Play your game, all of your games at the Pavilion. It's so electric in there. It is unbelievable. St. John's does it at MSG. That gets rid of the entire home court advantage when you play at MSG, when you play at Wells Fargo Center. I want to see, and I personally went to my first Villanova game ever this year. They played against Maryland, and Maryland's been middle of the pack in the Big Ten, not great, but it's insane how loud it gets in there. And, as an away team, especially if you're a freshman, there's no way you're going into there without any nerves. So that would be my hot take of the day. Every single college, and I know every athletic director is watching this right now. I know all 326 of you are watching me right now. Play your home courts. Don't go to NBA.
Play on campus. Play on campus.
Play on campus.
Yes, play on campus. I'm not opposed to that. I understand why they play at the Wells Fargo Center. It makes sense. But I don't hate that. It is weird being there for a Villanova basketball game because you look up at the rafters and there's just nothing remotely Villanova. Sixers, Flyers. It's like nothing. There's no school spirit. So I agree. All right, moving on. That's enough college basketball talk for today. We are going to get more into the weeds. Do not worry. Stay tuned to the Bocce Boys. We will make sure you're ready, that your bracket isn't total shit, because ours will be. But we will make sure that yours is not. All right, moving on. NHL. We had a trip this weekend. The three of us went to MetLife Stadium, and we watched the Philadelphia Flyers take on the New Jersey Devils. Davis is wearing the Stadium Series jersey right now. It was a great experience. We had a great time being there together, all that stuff. But the Flyers lost, and it was a tough loss. And it was also a very cold game. MetLife was freezing, to say the least, but MetLife was rocking. The guy in the Giants hat in front of us was not letting us forget that the Flyers were losing. That is for sure. But I had a great time with the game. And what do you guys think of your review of MetLife? I agree.
Of MetLife, the game was fun. Of MetLife, I mean, we all know what happened after the first period trying to go to the bathroom. That wasn't fun.
Oh, my God. It was insane. Just
that.
imagine a lot of people and then times it by 10 in a small area trying to go to the bathroom.
I mean, I think MetLife was actually fine. We kind of got messed up with the whole setup in the front of the stadium that we were walking next to, where we had to go around to
the stage and all that stuff.
I think it was a really cool design. It's obviously a very unique game to go to, but overall, it was just like, I don't know. I wouldn't do it again.
Yeah. Too cold.
It's a great Bocce Boys trivia question for all three of us. What who did you see in your first time in MetLife? You'd think Giants, Eagles, Jets, Patriots. No, Flyers, Devils, actually. Flyers, Devils. It was fun though. I mean, it was a good time. I thought the atmosphere of it being outside was really cool. And I think, yes, the 2.5 to 3 hours we were actually in our seats for, it was pretty miserably cold. We were definitely moving hand warmers around.
I couldn't sit in my seat. The seat was literally so cold to sit in. I didn't sit in it the last 2 periods.
Correct. But I mean, you got to look back and be like, that was pretty cool. We're not going to probably do something like that again. I mean, only a few teams get to do this every few years. So that was pretty cool. But I don't know. It was a tough loss, especially to the Devils, a team that's chasing us right now for this third spot.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that guy in the Giants hat was letting us hear the whole night. I mean, bringing up the Eagles to us, like obscure stuff. Like New York fans really just started with us. We're not the Philly fans get all the hate. We're the more attractive, sexy target, but it's the Giants fans. It's the New York fans that start the shit. Just want to throw that out there. But let's get into some hockey because the Devils had a big win over us on Saturday for them. They are currently chasing their second wild card spot in the Eastern Conference, but a tough loss for the Flyers. How are your impressions of the Flyers this year? Because they are surely overachieving. Do we think they're going to flame out? Are they going to make a playoff run? Are we happy they're even here? Where are we at?
Yeah, the biggest thing has been Harrison. I mean, Harrison's been great. We're not going to
speak of Harrison. Yes.
We're not going to speak of.
Yes, I just want to.
We know what I'm thinking of, and we're not going to speak of it. Sam Harrison has actually been fantastic this year, so he's the reason, huge part of the reason why we're in the spot we're in right now. But you can't forget guys like Konechny, Sanheim, even Bobby Brink, a guy who's hurt right now, who's going to be coming back.
Captain Coots,
Scott Lawton. I mean, there have been guys who have been really stepping up, and I think the magic number is going to be right about 93. So as long as we can get to 93 points, I think we're going to have a good shot at that third spot in the Met.
And I think a good thing to look at for this year for the boys is really the middle of March is going to be tough for us. We're going to have a couple of games in a row that are really going to be hard. Just to point out this stretch that we have starting March 16th, we play away at Boston, then we play the Leafs, the Hurricanes, Boston again, the Panthers, and then the Rangers, which is not fun at all.
Look at the YouTube channel if you want to see the standings, because you could just see that most of those teams were at the top of the entire NHL standings. So,
yeah, it is not fun. The good thing is we have the Canadians after that, which is nice.
And they're at the bottom of this list. If you're on the YouTube.
No, but we're gonna have a little bit of a tough stretch, and we have a lot of hard home games. Something to look for with the Flyers is really clutching up some home games where we have a lot of tough opponents. We play the Lightning that I'm going to next Tuesday. That's going to be a tough game, but a good one.
Let's go, Amir.
I know we play. We also play the Jets a little bit later. We play the Leafs a little bit later at home. A lot of games that we just need to kind of clutch up and make sure that we put them away. But they're going to be tough ones, and I think that's where we're going to really win and lose the season. It's later in March.
Yeah, it's nice to see the Flyers playing well again because I think hockey is just such an underrated sport in general. The three of us have been grinding NHL 24 this year, so it's nice to be like watching hockey and playing it in my off time too. But I mean, the spirit of hockey in Philly really is something. It is great to see, for lack of a better word, a rebellion in hockey in Philly. Like, they should not be good, especially with Torts as their coach. It's almost like a big FU to the league that they're even here, and I love it. It's fun that they got a bright future as well, and that hopefully, like, this is going to be a year in, year out thing. Like, I love rooting for the Flyers, going to these games, and it's not like, oh, I'm just going to a Flyers game. It's like, oh, hopefully they win so I can see them, in June or whatever it is for hockey playoffs. But you're right, Amir. They gotta win some games at home. They have been way better on the road than at home this year. And I mean, they gotta protect home ice, because if they get that third spot in the Metro, they most likely will have home ice advantage in the first round. Correct?
That would, probably wrong, because then we would actually probably be the 6th seed.
Okay.
I forget how hockey does it specifically. So the 2 wildcard teams right now, and I don't have it up currently. I just
the Red Wings and the
2 wildcard teams are both in the Atlantic. The 2 wildcard teams are both in the Atlantic. So I'm actually not sure how the NHL does their seeding, whether it's like the top 6, top 3 in the Atlantic and top 3 in the Met. Like, then they get seeded, and then the wildcards are 7 and 8, or if it's all of them above. Because if you're looking at the standings right now, and we don't have it up currently, Tampa Bay's in the first wildcard spot with 65 points. We have 65 points. So if for some reason Tampa Bay were to have more points than us, we would still hold the 3rd spot in the Met, but I don't know where we would be seated specifically. You know what I mean? So that's we'll figure that out and get some answers.
Yeah, we'll get there. And then before we get off hockey, I do want to ask you, Davis, or Amir, whoever knows the answer to this question. Why are the Vancouver Canucks so good this year? I'm not a huge hockey guy, but I know that they have not been good the last couple of years. In fact, I think they haven't made the playoffs in a couple of years, right? So how are they the best team in the league?
It's defense and goaltending. Demko is one of the better goalies in the NHL right now. It's a lot. Funny enough, it's going to be a lot of these Western Conference teams, which they're dominating currently. The entire league. I think it would be actually a little bit of a shock if any East team won, because you got the Jets with Hellebuck, you got Vancouver with Demko. So I think that a lot of it comes to streakiness. There's been a lot of streakiness in the NHL this year. So Winnipeg, and even Florida and Dallas have been making some just insane runs of 5, 8, 10. And let's not forget Edmonton's 17-game win streak. They're right back on the map with that win streak.
17?
So I believe it was 17. Then they lost
Edmonton.
to Vegas.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's over now. But if you look at the top of the list here, you're seeing teams with great goaltending. I mean, that is just the key to hockey right now. It's going to be the key to the playoffs. You look at a team like Edmonton, where their goaltending is actually a little shaky. Skinner and that has actually been pretty solid this year, but they flamed out in the playoffs because their offense is so good, but they don't know how to play defense. So I'd be worried about some of these teams who have great goaltending.
Yeah, I understand that. And I mean, like, goaltending is what it comes down to at the end of the day. Like, you hate the old saying, defense wins championships in football and all these other things, but like hockey, like, that's all it is, right? You can score as many goals as you want, but if the other team's scoring more, it doesn't matter, right?
Correct.
Yep,
agreed.
All right. So with the NHL, before we get off of it, what is your bold prediction for how the Flyers season will end?
It's a tough call, Ethan. It's a really tough call. I want to be the optimist and say that they're going to make it far, but you know what? I'm gonna fade the Flyers. I'm gonna say that they're gonna miss the playoffs, and
Dude,
I'm gonna go from there. I'm not gonna say anything else.
All right.
The schedule's tough. The schedule is tough. I'm gonna say we sneak into that 3rd spot. I think a wild card actually is probably going to be out of the picture with Tampa Bay and who is it, Carolina, that are right there or maybe it might actually be Detroit. It's Detroit and Tampa in the wild card spot. So we're really fighting for the 3rd spot in the Metro, and fortunately we have teams like the Devils and the Islanders riding us right now. But I really think that there's going to be a chance. I'm going to go 60-40, but I'm going to be on the optimist side. I think we sneak in.
When I said bold prediction, I was hoping for a little bit of fun here, like maybe they'll win the Stanley Cup. Was not expecting they'll sneak into the spot that they're in now and they'll miss the playoffs. So appreciate the optimism, guys. I'm going to go complete opposite. I'm saying the Flyers are winning a playoff series. this summer / early spring, whatever you want to call it. I believe in torts. I believe in. I just think that there's something about a team getting in the playoffs that shouldn't be there. That just they feel scrappy, especially the Broad Street Bullies. They are as scrappy gets, especially when they're being led by Sean Couturier and freaking Travis Konechny, who that guy is a junkyard dog. So him in the playoffs, I mean, I know that there's a lot of inexperience, but Philly will shock you. That's all I got to say.
I agree, but it's so tough. Hockey is so hard to analyze like this. I mean, it sounds weird to say that we're like this early in the season, but I mean, you look at last year, the Bruins were maybe the best team in NHL regular season history.
Yeah.
What happened? They went up 3-1 on the Florida Panthers and blew it to an 8 seed. So you never know. Like in the NBA, the world might explode if an 8 seed beat the Celtics or
100%.
you know what I mean, or the Timberwolves or whatever. But in hockey, really anything can happen. So it does come down to goaltending and defense.
Yeah, I mean, that would be. I mean, with all due respect, I do hope that the Flyers aren't being looked at like that. But I do get your point. The Bruins, I forgot how good they were last year, and like losing to the Panthers. Let's give respect to the Panthers. They did go far in the playoffs last year. They knocked off another really good team. I forget who it is, but I remember just how good the Bruins were last year, how dominant they were. And you're right. I mean, it's mid-February. We're almost towards the end of the season, but it doesn't matter. The season starts at the postseason for hockey, just like baseball to some degree.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Speaking of baseball, let's talk a little baseball. It's that time of the year, I think we talked about last podcast, where you're like, oh, spring training starting, football is ending, it sucks. But we're hitting the spot right now where it's time to get excited about baseball, especially about our Phillies. They signed Whit Merrifield this week. I think that's something to be excited about. But spring training's here. What are your impressions about spring training? Are we happy that we're almost at baseball season? Because it's starting to get to that point where it's like, okay, you can smell the spring in the air. It's getting a little bright outside a little later. We're getting that spring smell. What do you think?
Honestly, when we went to that hockey game, all I could think about was being at a baseball game, like in left field with a hot dog and a beer. That was all I could think about.
Yeah,
and I'm really excited for baseball. I mean, I was thinking about purchasing hopefully some season tickets, not a full package, but spending a little bit of money, going to see the Phillies for a couple of games. And I think we're all excited to get back into Citizens Bank Park, but I'm really, really hopeful for this year. I'm really excited for this year. I think everyone's, pretty pumped up. All the boys are ready to go. Management seems like they're on the ball kind of with, with the team's chemistry and what really need for success to happen with the Phils. But I'm excited. I'm ready to get going, and I'm just hoping it gets warmer quicker.
Agreed.
Yeah. And
I'm in the boat, Amir, where and Ethan, you asked for a bold prediction about NHL.
Please.
Phillies will make the World Series again this year. We lost a Game 7 last year.
I hope you're
Still
right.
think about it. I get angry.
I hope you're right.
Not go there. Made the World Series obviously 2 years ago. Lost to Houston. I don't think we had the depth at the moment, but now we're looking at a team with Whit Merrifield, a guy who's really not going to be a super contributor, but you're going to look at a guy.
All-Star last year. Come on.
Yeah, Bryce Harper at first base though. Now officially, that's fantastic.
Yep.
I think Turner should open the season hot this year. I think last year was very fluky on his side. And then you got a guy like Schwarber who's hit 44 and 45-ish home runs each year. Castellanos, he needs to stay hot the whole year, which he's flamed out in the playoffs the last 2 years a little bit. But I think this is the year. I mean, I still think that the Phillies are going to make a massive move at the trade deadline. We all know that I think it could be anybody. I think it really could be anybody.
I think Middleton is there. I think Middleton knows.
All right, hold on. That was going to be my follow-up question. All right, so my follow-up question was going to be, I'm sure you saw the quote today, but if you didn't, Middleton said to the Phillies today, a quote that he said to Ryan Howard, apparently before they won in 2008, go get my effing trophy back. Do you believe that we will get Middleton's effing trophy back?
Yes.
Davis thinks so.
Yes. I'm all on board, especially because of the moves I think that we're going to make during the season. I think that we didn't want to spend the money. Look, we tried to dish out the money to Yamamoto. He decided to go play with Shohei. That makes a lot of sense. I think that him going to LA is going to be a great fit for them, and I think that they are just
Dodgers teams
a
don't win
powerhouse in baseball, obviously. But
Oh
you
my
look at
God.
the last 2 years, a team like Atlanta that everyone was like, "Oh, no one's going to be able to stop them." Come on,
Back to back.
come on. What are we talking
Back to
about?
back.
It's a 5-game series. Anything can happen. So I'm in the boat. I do think that we're going to go after a starting pitcher to really solidify that third spot in case Ranger does not perform as well as hopefully.
So in case Wheeler walks next year, let's not forget that.
100%. But I think that I think this is a big in July, August. Hopefully, just bolster the bullpen and the starting arms, get the depth there, and I think this is the year. I really do think this is the year. I'm a little too optimistic, actually. I'm
a little afraid of your optimism, to be frank, because like when you get too full of yourself, I just don't like it. Usually, I like when you're pessimistic and you're like, "It's not our year. I hate it." It's like, all right, we can now get behind something. But when you're shouting from the rooftops, especially about baseball, like that's the thing that I think the most. That scares the shit out of me, Davis. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Again, you never know with baseball. It's a weird sport. Any team can play well any given year, but no.
Like 2 years ago, we weren't supposed to be there, and we got to the World Series. Then last year, we kind of were, and then we didn't. And we
it was
lost
Arizona.
The Diamondbacks in 7 games. So,
correct.
What are our expectations for this year? Are we? Is it World Series or bust now? Is that how it is until Bryce Harper is not in a Phillies uniform?
I would say no. I want to hear Amir's take on this though, but I would say it's not World Series or bust. Definitely give me I think if we lose,
let's let the season start first. By the way,
if we lose in the wild card round, it's a disappointing season. Again, see.
Let's let the season start.
Agreed. But we'll see. I think early thoughts are that a divisional series is exactly where we should be, and I think that anything less than that is going to be disappointing.
Hopefully, it's not against the Braves again for the third time.
Yeah, I was a big hater of the NLCS rings that we got back when we won.
That's loser talk.
And I think looking back on the previous losses in the playoffs, I don't want to say it's championship or bust, but it certainly feels like it. I'm sure the city of Philadelphia is ready for it, especially after the losses that we've had in championship games recently. Everyone's ready for it, and if it's going to be
By
a
the
team,
way, the Philly Water Dogs got second in a preseason tournament last
exactly. Look to the whatever the Philadelphia lacrosse team was. They just lost in a championship game.
That's what I said. Yeah, the Water Dogs.
Oh, is that what they're called?
Yeah,
I thought they were the Wings.
No, there's multiple lacrosse leagues. There's the PLL and then the NLL. But not to be confused with the NLL that merged with the MLL, and it's
okay. No one cares.
MLS starts soon. Let's go Union.
And that was talking soccer.
Anyways, I think me personally. I don't think it's championship or bust. I think if we make it to the championship series, even if we make it like pretty far in the NLDS, like I'll be happy. I mean, like you can't be mad at a playoff run. No matter like who you are, maybe if you're the Chiefs at this point, you're like, I'm going to be mad if we lose in the wild card round or something. Like, I can understand that, but I think it's ridiculous to get mad at a team for playing their hearts out and losing in the playoffs, especially a team like the Phillies who are so streaky that they're going to lose at some point. They're not, built for sustained success like the Dodgers are or the Braves, I guess. But I'm still expecting a lot from them.
Yeah, I think it's unfair to place expectations on a team like that. But with that being said, it is championship or bust. It is. Yeah, I mean, it is. I think it is because if you are paying 5 guys in your lineup like this amount of money and you can't get to a championship, like I think it's time to shake it up. And and from that aspect, it is championship or bust with this group of Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Real Muto, and Castellanos.
Let's talk about the young guys. Like, if you're going to talk about like all the guys are paying, let's talk about the young guys too, and how we do have some guys built to hopefully stay with the team for a little while. It's not necessarily the pitchers.
But we need guys like Rojas to hit, and we need Stott to be consistent for another year, and we
Well,
need
that's what these
Marsh
years
to,
are for. That's what these years are for. It's like
Agreed.
we have these. I think I personally feel, and I said this. I don't know to who, but I said that last year was probably my favorite year of baseball I've ever watched. It didn't matter that we lost in the championship series.
I
That
kind of
was my
agree with
favorite
that.
team and my favorite
Yeah.
year of baseball I've ever watched. Not
Oh,
even the
favorite
2008.
team.
Yeah, not even the 2008 Phillies. I loved the Phillies. I mean, I've loved them my whole life. But something about the team last year, especially coming off of, the success we've had in the past, it just felt so much different. It wasn't like we were holding our heads up high. We just like got the job done. We
But
got
isn't
there
that
and
why
we did
it
it.
made that loss against the Diamondbacks feel worse? Doesn't that? To me, that's
I
why
think
I'm
we just
like
ran
so
out of
down on
juice.
this year.
I think we ran out of juice. It wasn't.
But we did the year
wasn't,
before, so it's like, why it can't keep happening? You know what I mean? Like,
well, then maybe that's where we bring in someone at the trade deadline who really makes a difference. And that's, what Middleton does. That's what management does, where they say, you know what, we have a great team, but we just need a
all
little
right,
bit of push.
then let me ask you this: if they underperform this year, and we'll say that that's not getting to the NLCS, is Thompson out? Rob Thompson.
I'd probably say
honestly,
no.
I wouldn't
Okay.
say, yeah.
I'm just
no.
asking. Just asking. I don't think you should be.
I think a baseball manager is very much a figurehead.
Yeah.
And I think really the only decisions that they might be a part of, and teams, I'm no insider, but I mean, the only thing a manager does is really their bullpen and who they throw in pitching wise. And let's be completely honest, I don't know what you guys thought. As a baseball fan, a guy who played baseball, the bullpen, some of the bullpen moves in the playoffs, especially against the Diamondbacks early in the series, and late in the
Kimbrel.
the Kimbrel thing was interesting.
It was just the placement and the positioning of it. That was all.
I agree, but they really need to solidify who's doing what in their bullpen. Who's going to be the guy who comes in the fifth inning? Who's going to be the setup guy? Because they didn't know where was Jeff Hoffman. Where were they going to put Jeff Hoffman in? He's a guy who was a stud for us for a little bit. And then against the Braves was it against the Braves? Against the Braves, game 4 against the Braves. Can't believe I remember this. They threw Alvarado in for 3 pitches. What are you doing? I don't
How do
get
you remember that?
Look it up.
I believe you. I'm not going to test you on it. I believe you.
Like it's things like that I think Rob Thompson's very much a righty lefty guy, and I'm not a guy like that. I'm much more of a traditionalist. I think you put your best pitcher out there in whatever situation it is. So I think he learned his lesson. I hope he learned his lesson from the playoffs last year, and I think I really hope that he's just going to throw his best guys out there a little bit more often instead of getting the matchup.
How often do old managers set in their ways learn from a lesson like that?
Sounds like Doc Rivers.
He's not an old manager.
That's kind of sound like Doc Rivers. but Rob Thompson doesn't blow leads.
Not yet.
What happened in that series against the Diamondbacks? Well, that's open for interpretation. But let's quickly finish off with what you just touched on, Amir. Doc Rivers. We don't really have to talk much about this. He just said that he said to the ownership today that he didn't understand why they made him the coach when they hired him.
Do you know why his name is Doc? You know why his name is Doc?
Is this a serious question?
Yes.
I forget.
He doesn't have a PhD in anything other than losing. He is named Doc because he likes Julius Erving. And he wanted to go by Doc for Dr. J.
Really?
Idiot.
He's a wannabe. He's a wannabe. He really is. So, I mean, this
ruining Milwaukee.
Basically, JJ Redick went on First Take today and started like trashing Doc Rivers, really not saying anything that anyone else hadn't been saying. Pat Bev shot back, and then Doc Rivers just totally, for no reason, went on Sirius XM and lit himself on fire. I didn't really understand that, but from Sixers fan perspective, this is just shit we've been saying for 3 years, so this isn't new. There's nothing new to say.
First round exit.
Yep.
Not a chance. But you know what's going to be really interesting before we wrap it up? Sorry. Sixers play the Bucks in next week, maybe 2 weeks.
The 25th, I think. I think
next week.
it.
Can't wait to watch Patrick Beverley. I think that's going to be primetime television.
I hope to God we get a Sixers Bucks playoff series. Now that would be cinema. That would be, it'd be so good. By the way, it is the 25th. I think that's a Sunday at 1:00. So just throwing that out there. Prime time television. Prime time television. All right. So I think that's it for today. This is a packed episode. There's a lot to get to. Thank you to everyone who's been watching on YouTube. We've been noticing a lot of people liking, sharing, all that stuff. Views are going up days after we post. So I appreciate you guys continuously. Maybe it's a couple days after we post, but going back to videos, checking all of our content. It really does mean a lot, whether it's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get it. But thank you for supporting. And we got another episode probably coming this week or this weekend. Watch out for that. But the Bocce Boys, thank you. Have a great night. See ya.